In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make these cute Halloween ghosts using soft fabric from the Dollar Tree in the automotive aisle. So really excited about it. It is an easy project. You can get a free pattern with the templates that you can download. Look in the link below the video to find that. But before we get started, I want to show you this printer. Call me old school. I've always had a large printer in my home for work and other things, but more and more I'm hearing about how people don't have printers. Oh, I can't print that. I don't have a printer. They're doing everything digitally. So if that is you, but you occasionally want to print a pattern or something else, you could look at a thermal printer. Look at how small this thing is. It's amazing. So the people from MUNBYN, I hope I'm saying that right, gave me this to try. So I'm going to show you how it works. And I did use it with this project. And you can also find a link to find this below the video. So make sure you take a look at that. And there will be a promotional code too, because they want you to get a deal if you learn about it from this video. So let's take a look at this. It is a thermal printer, which basically means it's like a cash register receipt, right? A lot of people think they don't know what thermal printers are, but you actually do. So it isn't super long-term paper. It lasts for 3 years and you don't want to put a ton of heat on it. So let me show you. There's just these little buttons on the side. It took me a minute to figure out how to load this, so I'm going to do that. You want to open it up, and it does come with a roll of paper in here. This moves to hold or release that. You want to take that out unless you're going to use the rolled paper. I am not at this point. I'm going to close it, and I'm going to turn it on. It comes with a cord, a USB-C, so you charge it. So you don't have to have it plugged in when you're using it. I think this is a fantastic option if you like to travel, go to retreats. You can have all of your patterns and everything on your phone or maybe in a Google Drive or something. Download them to the phone, use the app, and print right from there. So cool. So I am going to be using this letter size paper, and it is folded. The plain side is the front. The side with the black is the back. On one side of this, there is metal with the little cutting jiggy things, kind of like on saran wrap. So that is going to come out that side. So if you're using the roll, then you can use that to tear. With this letter paper, it's already perforated, so that's not as important. But I'm just going to feed the paper into this side. And it catches it, and you'll see it's getting it all lined up and ready for me. And then when that turns green, it is good to go. Now I'm going to show you how this app works, but this is an app called Smart Fox, and you can pick all different kinds of things, and it's a free app. You can, print a document, do a tattoo print, scan and print, do labels, invoices, websites. So we're going to do document. It's connecting to my printer. And then you can see there's all different kinds of documents that you can connect to. I'm going to be doing the free sample, and you can get this off my website. Look for the link below. And then I'm going to scroll down, and you can print all of the directions, or you can just print the templates. So I'm going to click the print button. And then here you're going to choose the direction, and this is landscape. Paper type, you decide if you're doing roll or folded. Then I don't want to print every page. So here I'm going to put 4 to 5. And then I'm just going to double check before I hit print. So landscape, print normal. It prints really, really well. And I'm just going to hit print. It's going to confirm, hit print now. And now we shall just watch the magic happen. It's nice and quiet. And I was actually really impressed and amazed at how nice and dark that is. And that's it. How easy is that? And then to take the paper out, you're just going to open it back up, and then you can just slide that back out, close that, push the button to turn it back off. I'm glad that they let me try that and share that with you. Now let us move on to our tutorial so we can use these templates and make some stuffed ghosts for Halloween. Now let's look at our supplies. This looks like a big old mess and like you need a lot, but it's really not as complicated as it appears. This is the little ghost that we are going to make. I'm going to use orange for the banners this time instead of the pink. Then you need fabric scissors, and I like to use pinking shears, but you do not need them. If you don't have pinking shears, I would recommend a small pair of scissors like this for clipping the curves and here when you're going, before you turn that right side out. Then you're going to need felt or scraps of felt, and you can get a free PDF that shows you the sizes of everything that you need so that you can make this cute little banner and the eyes. Optional embroidery thread if you want to sew on a mouth. This one I just did with a pen to see how it looked. We're going to do the next one a little bit differently. Then I'm going to use this rickrack for the banner, just like I did with this one. I think it's super cute. Stuffing, whatever your preference is. I am using the Polyfill Crafter's Choice from Fairfield World. Then I wanted to make him nice and soft. So I went to the Dollar Tree and I got this microfiber cloth. It is 16 by 24. And I'm going to be able to get my whole ghost out of this, possibly two. We shall see when we get to cutting. You don't have to use this. You could use a towel if you want him to have a different texture. You can obviously use white cotton, whatever you want. But I just thought this would be a little bit fun. I will say I did sew with it once. It is very fuzzy. You're definitely going to want to clean your machine when you're done with this project and your workspace, but I think it is worth it. Then some straight pins. Needle and thread for sewing it closed. I'm going to show you a trick with a stapler that I came up with that I'm pretty pleased with myself about, and I'm sure you're just dying to know about that, so let's get into it. So I'm going to take my template. We'll start with this one, which has the designs for the banner and the letters, and then also the eyes. This is a mouth if you just wanted to trace that on, and you could embroider it. You can just draw one on. I'm actually going to cut a third black oval and have a big ghost mouth. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut this template apart because I know these are going to be orange, and I am using paper scissors, not my fabric scissors. I know they cut the paper when we're cutting out the pieces, but I'm only cutting paper. I use my paper scissors. You can either use a big piece of felt or you can grab some scraps. I had some scraps of black, so I'm going to use that. And this is where my stapler comes in. Because these are pretty hard to pin, like you wouldn't be able to pin them and cut without cutting through a pin, so that's not going to work. Using glue, which I sometimes do, like put glue on the back and put it onto fabric so it stays temporarily while you cut. It doesn't work on the felt. I did try that. So I decided to try stapling it. So I'm just going to put 2 staples, although you do have to cut this into individual pieces if you're going to use my little staple method. Have you ever tried this before? I don't know. I couldn't sleep the other night and I just started thinking, how can I get these to stay better? Because you can also cut them without it, but the paper is going to slide around a little bit more. But this stapling works great. And I love this thermal paper because it is nice and thin. It's easier to cut. It's also super portable. Okay, so I have stapled those on. Now I am going to cut them out. I do use smaller scissors when I'm cutting out these center parts. And what I do is I fold that a little bit and then I will clip to get a hole in the center. In case you haven't cut out many things like this before, this is how I do it. And then I'm going to just hold it together, but it is staying pretty nicely with these staples. We have our O cut out, but it has staples. So now I'm just going to take tweezers and I'm going to bend the back of the staple back up. And once you have that bent back up, you can just pull it right out. Just make sure you don't poke it into your finger when you're bending that second side. And then if you need to do any maintenance, see there's a funny little piece there. You can just trim up your letters. Make sure that shape is nice. And do that for all 3 letters. Didn't do the best job on that B, but it'll just look a little bit spooky. Now I'm going to cut these banners out of the orange, and I'm going to line this line up with this edge, this line up with this edge. That's just 2 cuts I'm not going to have to make. I am going to pin those. This could be a fun project to do with kids or scouts, because with felt especially, you can decide if you want to sew things together or you can also use glue. So this banner could be completely glued together. You could even have the kids hand stitch the ghost instead of sewing it. So it could be an easy project like that. But I'm going to show you how to put this together with your sewing machine. Okay, so now we have our banners. You're going to want to put your letters down a little bit. Going to want to spell correctly. And you're going to put it down a little bit because if you're going to use rickrack, I'm going to sew mine across the top. If you want to sew it behind, you can center the letters more. But I think it's really fun when it goes over the top like that. So just think about that before you sew these on. I'm just going to sew a single stitch right around these letters. I have black thread in both the top and the bottom, and I'm using a pretty small stitch. I'm going to pull up this bobbin thread so that I don't get a big knot on the back. If you've never seen this, you basically put your needle down while holding on to the top thread and then lift it, and that pulls your bobbin thread up. Then you're going to grab both, put them under your foot, and hold them back. Then you can go forward a few stitches and then backwards to knot your thread, and you're not going to have that bird's nest that you sometimes get on the bottom if you don't do that. Now, my machine also has function where I can push a button, and when I stop, my foot is going to stay up. I know, I'm so spoiled, but I love that about it. I'm using a Janome M7 Continental. So then whenever I want to pivot, it's just going to go up for me. And because I'm sewing black on black felt, you really will not see this thread at all. So I'm not being super careful about making sure it's always in the middle. This is really just to get it to stay on. Now you could be fancier. You could do a white stitch and make the letters, or you could use a metallic, but we're just going for quick, cute, and done here today. Sometimes I can't grab that really well without poking myself, so I always keep tweezers by my machine to grab that bobbin thread. So we have our BOO done. We can stick this on the banner later, or we can do it now. I'm going to just do it now. I'm going to fold this in half, find the center, and the center is going to go on the center of that center O. Lots of centers. And you can put this banner together with anything. You could put ribbon, you could use string, cording. For smaller projects like this, I like to just look around and see what I have and decide which of those things I want to use instead of running out and buying something new, but totally up to you and depends on what you have in your stash. Now we need to make the eyes. I'm going to do a third one. And if you want to do the mouth, just reuse one of the eyes, the eye templates, after you cut it out the first time. Now we are going to work on the ghost. It's a great piece of fabric for $1.25. I'm going to grab my pattern, and I'm going to put it pretty close to this edge, but you don't want it on the stitched edge. And I'm going to pin him down. Pinned on, we are just going to cut that out. And keep your fabric flat on your table as much as possible. It is going to give you a much more accurate cut. Because if you start picking it up and cutting, your fabric is more likely to move. It is a little bit harder on some of these curves, but the closer to flat on your table that you can stay, the more accurate your pieces are going to be. Okay, we'll take the pins off, and then let's see if we can do two of these guys from that one cloth. You can. What a deal. The next thing you need to do is you need to decide what direction you want your ghost facing. So in my first one, I have him looking off to the right, but you could just as easily put the eyes on the other side. So I'm going to do that for this one so they can be like they're ghosts in love looking at each other. So I'm just going to flip that over and then just look at the photo on the free PDF to get a feel for where you want to put your eyes. You don't want them too low where they're going to get in the way of your banner. And then also remember, you're going to be sewing with a 1/2 inch seam. So don't put them too close to the top because we don't want them to get sewn into that seam. And now it is time to sew down our ghost eyes and mouth. Now, when I did the last one, I didn't put anything underneath this. And I will tell you, it didn't move really well because it's so fluffy and fuzzy on the bottom that the feed dogs had a hard time really moving it around. So this time, I'm just going to take a little scrap of white cotton fabric and put that behind it because you're not going to see it once we get that stuffed. But it's going to make it move better in my machine. And it's also going to hopefully make there be a little bit less fluff going into the bottom of my machine, although you'll get plenty when we sew this ghost back together. So we're just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to do a very short, actually I'm going to do like 1.2, very short stitch all the way around these eyes to tack them down. If you want to, like if you like to embroider, you could embroider the eyes on, you could embroider around the edges, but again, I'm just going for quick and done here. You could also use buttons, Google eyes, all kinds of things. This could also be really cool. You could embroider, if you have an embroidery machine or you want to embroider by hand, you could embroider a child's name or initial on the back of the ghost. So it's like a stuffed animal toy for them versus a decoration. So many ways you can dress this up. Now our ghost eyes are embroidered on, and these little are just white fuzzies from the towel that come off. I like it with the mouth. Now, as I said, it moved a little bit. You can leave this on, or you can just trim off the excess white. So it's pretty much just behind where you sewed those eyes on. Totally up to you. All right, let's go back to the workstation and we will get him pinned together. Our next step is to pin the ghost together. You'll notice I made him a little flat on the bottom so that he will stand up kind of nicely. He doesn't stand up on his own. Maybe if you put something really heavy in the bottom, but he leans against things really nicely. So you're just going to match these edges and pin all the way around. And then I always like to put 2 pins where I need to stop, because sometimes you just get on a roll and you're sewing along and you're just so happy, and then you end up sewing the whole thing together, and then you got to get your seam ripper out and do all that. So I like to put 2 pins so I know where to stop. We are going to sew around this with a short stitch because we do have quite a few curves, and we're going to want to turn it right side out to get these hands so that they can hold that banner. We don't want to lose the back of the ghost's tail. I don't know, is that what you call that? What do you call that? So use a shorter stitch, maybe a 1.5, 1.4. Before we turn our ghost right side out, we need to clip these curves and definitely these little points by the arms so that it's going to turn and give us a nice shape. And I like to do that with a combination of small scissors and pinking shears. But if you don't have pinking shears, you're totally fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the small scissors and I'm going to snip into the inside corners and kind of cut out some of that bulk. Don't clip your stitches. So I'm going to do that on both sides here. Most of the rest with pinking shears. So the reason I love pinking shears for curves is, again, it's fast. So you're just going to use the pinking shears and stay on the outside of the stitching. Don't cut your stitching, but you're just going to cut some of this extra bulk out. I use a 1/2 inch seam allowance on this guy because I know, especially with this fluffy fabric, it doesn't always stay a 1/2 inch. So you just want to get some of this extra bulk out. When you turn it, you're not going to have all of the fabric that's past the stitching pulling and not giving you a nice curve. I don't trim where I left it open because I want to have enough fabric that I can turn under and hand stitch closed once we stuff it. All right, so try and get most of the fuzz off of your cutting mat or your workspace. Now we're just going to turn it right side out. Now, if you do decide to make this for a child, make sure you don't have small parts that could come off. All the safety things, just remember that. I'm just going to push these hands out with my fingers for now, kind of get that shape out as best as I can. Then I'm going to use this little turning tool. It's not a super point on there. If you don't have one, chopsticks work great for this, but I'm just going to gently push and it will help get the points out better than with my fingers, but you want to do it slowly and gently so that you don't push through your stitching. I mean, if you do push through your stitching, you'll live. You can just hand stitch it closed, but it's just better not to. You can also use it to run along this head curve, get that curve pushed out a little bit better. Now comes the stuffing. If you've never stuffed anything like this before, you want to start with small pieces, kind of roll it up, and you want to put it in the tiny spots. You're going to make sure these hands are a nice shape and thickness that you like before you start really going to town on the body. Okay, so the small sections are done. Now I'm going to do the head. So you just want to stuff him so he's as fat or skinny as you want, kind of keep pushing to get this curve the way you like it. And you want to make it pretty stuffed on the bottom so you don't end up with a big air pocket when you stitch that together. But you'll see now we left this bottom section a little bit longer so that we can fold that in. And you can use the pins, or I'm going to clip this to hold that so that it's folded the way I want it to be as I hand stitch that closed. And then once you stitch that closed, you can just decide exactly how you want this to be hanging. You can have it hang down and curve a little bit more. You can have that come behind. I just do a little hand stitch with black thread on either side of this rickrack, and I let this kind of float around. Look how cute he turned out. They're such a cute little pair ready to decorate for Halloween. Of course, you can make the faces your own, play with the colors. You could do smaller banners and put someone's name. You could embroider a name or an initial on the back. You could use heat transfer vinyl and put somebody's name on the back if you're making these as little trick-or-treat gifts. So many ways to use these. I would love to know in the comments what you think, who you're going to make them for, and if you're going to personalize them in any way. Now, one thing to know about this paper is there's no ink involved. It's done by using heat onto the paper. And because of that, there's some things that you need to remember if you're going to be printing and storing things. Number one, it's not going to last forever. This, as it says on here, it's going to last for about 3 years, assuming you follow these conditions. So assuming you're keeping it inside in a temperature less than 25 degrees Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Avoid direct sunlight, fluorescent, and similar UV light sources. So as long as you put it in the packaging, or if it's a roll, keep it in your machine, it's going to store pretty well as long as it's not too hot. Now, the paper itself, if it gets too hot, it will yellow over time. It will turn black if it gets really, really hot. So let's just test that and see what happens like if we iron on it. I'm not sure why we need to iron on it, but because I have all these details, I'm just super curious. I'm told it's going to turn yellow at about 118 degrees Fahrenheit or 48 degrees Celsius. So put it in the sun in Phoenix in the summer, this thing's going to turn yellow. Let's see. I just turned this on, so it's not totally heat. Oh, it's hot. Look at that. So this must be over 158 degrees. Okay, that's just kind of fun, actually. No ironing your thermal paper unless you just want it to turn completely black. Look, Mom, science. All right, so that's what happens if you hit it with an iron. You can make your own block paper.